A few years ago, while waiting for a delayed flight, I wandered into a coffee shop and finally opened a book I had been meaning to read. It's called No Happy Endings. It's Nora McInerney's memoir of enduring 3 devastating losses in a single year: a miscarriage, the death of her father, and the death of her husband. It's a tragicomic account of learning to move forward while carrying immense grief. I was captivated by it, sitting in that airport with tears streaming down my face. Before boarding my flight, I searched for her podcast. Its title? Terrible, Thanks for Asking. It's comical, but an unflinching answer to the question we so often stumble over when life is unbearably hard. How are you? There are days when the most honest answer is exactly that. Terrible. Thanks for asking. Nora's journey was deeply personal, but her message incredibly universal. There are moments that feel terrible, but that does not mean we are destined to live in despair. As a society today, it feels as though we are being asked that same dreaded question collectively. How are you? Today on Yom Kippur, while we name what is broken in ourselves, we also name what is broken in the world. We dare to be honest about it. War, hunger, innocent loss of life, the loss of civility, the unraveling of progress, the fractures that feel unhealable. At times, it's as if a deep brokenness is seeping into every corner of our society, and more than once, as I have scrolled the headlines, I have wanted to answer on behalf of all of us. How are we? We are terrible. Thank you for asking. Despair is not new to the Jewish story. After the Babylonians destroyed the first temple, our ancestors wept, certain that Jewish life had come to an end. When Romans leveled the second temple, it was as if the covenant was shattered itself. In 1492, after centuries of flourishing, Spanish Jewry was expelled. During the Holocaust, an entire world of Jewish life was nearly extinguished. And on October 7th, the horror that shook Israel and the Jewish people to our core remains a day many of us are still struggling to comprehend. But with all that our history teaches us, this day of Yom Kippur also calls us to a bold declaration. We are not beyond repair. We are keenly familiar with the words of Unatan Atokef, confronting us with the fragility of life. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written, and on Yom Kippur, it is sealed, who shall live, who shall die, who by fire and who by water. Its rawness and bluntness leaves us shaken with vulnerability. And yet, at the very heart of this prayer comes a turn. After all the unraveling, who by famine, who by drought, who by earthquake, who by plague, it concludes by insisting that we are not powerless. At the end of this list of troubling imagery, we come to the idea that tefillah, teshuvah, and tzedakah, repentance, prayer, and justice, can soften the decree. In other words, even when the world feels as though it's collapsing, we are given tools to respond. We are handed practices that call us back to responsibility and hope. Not the kind of hope that manifests in that kitschy surface level type of way, but in the deepest Jewish sense. It's hope as a choice, as a discipline, a responsibility, a way of living in defiance of despair. In his book, To Heal a Fractured World, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks teaches that there are no logical grounds to believe that tomorrow will be a better day than today. Nonetheless, Judaism is a religion of hope. Out of the rubble of those moments of destruction I just mentioned in our history emerged new forms of resilience. Exile gave rise to Torah study and synagogue life in Babylonia. The loss of the temple gave birth to rabbinic Judaism. Survivors of the Holocaust rebuilt Jewish life in Israel and around the world. And today, we are in the process of shaping what it means to be a post-October 7th Jew. Knowing it's up to us to decide whether we continue to wallow in despair or find ways to make meaning and reinvigorate what it means to be Jewish in this world. Rabbi Sachs, in speaking about the sense of hope, he continues. He says, optimism and hope are not the same. Optimism is the belief that the world is changing for the better. And hope is the belief that together we can make the world better. I'm going to say that one more time. Optimism is the belief that the world is changing for the better, but hope is the belief that together we can make the world better. Optimism is a passive virtue, hope an active one. It needs no courage to be an optimist, but a great deal of courage to have hope. Rabbi Sachs teaches that as long as we maintain hope as a verb, we are certainly not beyond repair. So it leaves me with two questions I've been carrying. What gives us hope, and how do we put hope into action? In other words, what's the why and what is the how? What is the why and what is the how of hope, specifically in these days that we are living through? This is an individual answer. There's no one reason to have hope or no one way to obtain it. But I do believe that it is our responsibility to begin figuring out the answers to those questions. Let me start by sharing my why with you. I looked back at my notes for my last 20 or so baby namings I've done. In nearly every single one, when I asked parents what they hope for their child, their answers included some version of this line. I hope my child will grow up to live in a world better than the one we are living in now. Take a moment to let that sink in. Think about a child in this world who you love. Whether your own child, a grandchild, a niece or nephew, a neighbor, a student. What do you hope for them? And what do you see in their future? Every day in this building, we see the possibility of repair written on our children's faces. We see them learning to walk through the world with confidence and compassion, absorbing values of kindness and justice that I know will shape the future. I think about my own daughter, who this past Saturday just turned 1. As many of you may know or remember, the first year of parenting is not easy, even scary. But the thing I found scariest this year is imagining if any of the realities of our time were to happen to her. Throughout this year, I've imagined 7 years from now, what would happen if my second grader was in a school with an active shooter? I imagine 15 years in the future, sending her on a summer program and receiving a call that she's in a Tel Aviv bomb shelter. 30 years into the future, a world where my daughter tells me she is unable to receive the health care that she desperately needs. I know we are not beyond repair because I am unwilling to look into my child's eyes without being able to say to her, I am doing everything in my power I can to make our world more whole. From the moment our ancestors stood at Sinai, Judaism has been a covenant not just with God, but with generations yet to come. Each of us is here because someone before us chose to pass on hope. And now it's our turn to make sure the chain is unbroken. Too often we put the onus on the next generation to make the changes that we want. But it's actually up to us to work towards creating the world we want them to inherit. They call on us to begin the sacred work of tikkun olam, of healing and fixing and stitching back together a torn world. I have found teachers of hope who remind us how to hold fast when despair feels overwhelming. I think of Rachel Goldberg Polin, who became a voice of hope as her son Hirsch was held hostage, eventually killed in the tunnels of Gaza. Since that day, she has spoke with such raw and authentic honesty about grief, but with extraordinary courage about hope. She reminds us of Rabbi Sachs' teaching, the distinction between hope and optimism. If a mother in the depths of anguish can summon the courage to hope, not just passively, but getting out there and acting on it as she does, then we too can choose to live with that same commitment to repair. In her commencement speech at Yeshiva University this past May, Polin turned to our tradition. From the book of Pirkei Avot, The Ethics of Our Ancestors, she said, "We are taught to turn it, for everything is in it." Though a reference to our Torah scrolls, she interprets this as a guide for how to continue working towards hope. She says, when things don't make sense, keep turning it, unwind it, untangle it, get lost in our tradition, for everything is in there. We are meant to keep wrestling and searching and building. That is the action of hope. And so the question for us becomes, how do we do that turning together? How do we transform hope from a conviction to a practice? This is where I'll turn from the why to the how. We are living in the most divisive moment in our nation since the Civil War. Our country is at a boiling point of polarization that is unraveling relationships everywhere from the boardroom to our family dinner tables. The result is antagonism and avoidance, ideological siloing, the loss of insight, and overall disengagement from talking about the most pressing moral and political issues of our time. And our synagogues and Jewish institutions are certainly not immune. We too are experiencing unprecedented division and separation around perspectives on Israel, the rise of anti-Semitism, what constitutes Jewish identity. I know many of us have just met or have yet to meet. But as you get to know me, you'll learn that the singular most important thing to me about our synagogue is that it remains a safe space to engage in the most important questions of our time. Of course, that includes wrestling with God, discovering prayer, and delving into the lessons of history. But equally so, it must be a place where our deep sense of belonging allows us to engage in the hard conversations about our city, our country, Israel, and the world in which we are living. I believe wholeheartedly that the pushback against this new normal must begin in a community like ours. If we can't talk about our beliefs in houses of worship generally, and our synagogue specifically, then where can we? If we can't feel safe bringing our stories and backgrounds and speak as our fullest, most authentic selves here, in a place built upon pillars of respect and belonging and our shared Jewish values, then our brokenness will only deepen. Over the last 5 years, I have become deeply invested in an organization called Resetting the Table, which I am eager to bring to our community. Resetting the Table is a nonpartisan initiative that strengthens civic life by equipping communities with the tools to communicate, deliberate, and truly listen across political divides. I have witnessed and experienced firsthand the transformation that happens when we stop talking past one another and instead sit face to face with honesty and humility to share our stories, uncover the experiences that shape our views, and dare to see the world through somebody else's eyes. The goal is not to change minds, not even to find common ground. The goal is to build the courage to stay in relationship even when we disagree. In the near future, you'll receive an invitation from me to participate in a Resetting the Table Speaking Across Differences workshop here at Temple. An opportunity for us to practice this discipline of hope, to put it into action with respect and courage and care. I hope you'll join me. Because that very act of wrestling with difference is not just a dream or a thought. It's a proactive choice of hope. Because when we refuse to walk away, we discover that trust can be rebuilt, connection can be deepened, and community can be sustained. That resilience, the choice to remain bound together, is itself an act of repair. So as we stand together on this Yom Kippur, we have said the words, on Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. And yet the prayer does not leave us powerless. It insists teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah are the tools that can soften even the harshest decree. They serve as living and breathing practices that can lead us to wholeness. Not with passive optimism, but with the active courage to return, to pray, to act with hope. On this day of atonement, when we begin anew with a clean slate, we have the chance to take the first step this new year towards rebuilding a world our children will be proud of. When history asks what we did in this broken time, may we be able to answer with conviction. We are certainly not beyond repair. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. May the one who makes peace on high lead us to wholeness, hope, and above all, the blessing of peace.